Welcome to the Cabral Concept, where board-certified naturopath and integrative health practitioner Dr. Stephen Cabral shares how he was diagnosed at the age of 17 with a life-altering illness and given no hope for recovery. It was only after studying and traveling all over the world did he discover how to combine ancient Ayurvedic healing practices with state-of-the-art naturopathic and functional medicine to fully rebalance the body and re-energize it with life. It's time to discover how to get well, lose weight, and finally feel alive again. And now, here's your host, Dr. Stephen Cabral.
Welcome back, everyone. Thanks for joining me here today. I'm going to be linking up some serious research on today's show. And I always like to give you the research just so that you know that on the Cabral Concept, what we are doing is we're following the true science, the actual real science, the unbiased science from both a state-of-the-art functional medicine perspective, conventional medicine, naturopathic medicine, etc. So what we don't do is play favorites. We don't play favorites to a particular diet, a particular exercise style, a particular piece of equipment, machine, or even supplement. Like, there's no favorites. What we are looking to do is completely optimize your mind and body, and I might even say spirit as well, your spirit for life, for vitality, for longevity, for wanting to even stick around, right, for the next 50, 60 plus years of your life. So what I want to do here today, though, is, and I know that it's oftentimes even considered a taboo topic, but it can't be. Not when we're talking about health, right? Like, so we have to take away the overall politics, and we have to take away the overall, like, what we can talk about, what we can't. Because obesity and being, I would say, 30 plus pounds over your ideal body weight is causing people tremendous hardship in their life. So I talk about this topic not from a vanity perspective, because honestly, we know that if you are 5'8", your healthy range could be anywhere from like 130 pounds or 125 pounds to 160 pounds or so. So there's a lot of area for health within a given height, right? And even if your body fat's lower, you might even be able to be have even more weight on your body. So again, there's a good 40-pound swing for not all heights, but once you start to get to be like 5'7", 5'8", and above 40 pounds, below that it might be 30 pounds, but it's a big swing for health. And I'm not talking about that. So I'm not talking about six-pack abs. You can get six-pack abs if you want, totally up to you. But what I'm talking about is how literally obesity and being overweight is causing people to lose a minimum of 10 years off their life. A minimum 10 years off their life. But it's not just that. Because once people start getting in their 40s, they're type 2 diabetic. They already have dangerous levels of fat in their blood. We're going to call it cholesterol or lipids. They are moving towards higher blood pressure, and they're moving towards autoimmune disease. And if you don't think that Alzheimer's is just around the corner in the next 15 or 20 years, then you're mistaken, right? Like, it's not. You can have higher levels of blood sugar, higher levels of fat in your blood, higher levels of inflammation, and not expect to also get Alzheimer's. So are we dramatically neglecting people's health by not talking about helping people to get to a healthy body weight? We are. There's a huge difference between respect and being kind to people, no matter what weight they're at. Over thin, we can call it, or overweight, however you want to look at it. Technically, it's called over fat in medical-based terms, and there isn't necessarily one for underweight, but it's essentially underweight. And what we have to understand is there's an overall sweet spot, and it's big enough for everybody to necessarily fit well into for the majority of people, 99+%. And the only people who really don't are really thin framed. Well, that's more vata, but like it's deeper than that. And then there's more endomorph, where you can actually have a lower body fat percentage, but be 10 pounds over your healthy BMI weight. And that's okay. And again, you might say, well, bodybuilders, again, that's such a small fraction of the population. So let's not get too deep on that. That's not the average individual, right? Like it's not even 0.001. Like it's less than that. So we'll kind of step away from that for just a moment. So what I want to share with you here today, though, is one of the absolute most important things that you can do for your overall health, quality of life, which means not suffering as you get older, no joint pain, difficulty sleeping, fatigue, low mood, low energy, low libido, all the lows, right? Is we want to be able to achieve a healthier weight. Today, what I want to do is share with you actually what the CDC says, what the Mayo Clinic says, what the National Institute for Health says, and what Harvard University, Harvard Health say about the 4 different types of what they're called obesogenic factors. These are basically environmental and internal factors that cause people to gain weight and have a more difficult time taking off the weight. So I want to share with you that today and just kind of go through the list. Is you, or I should say, are you, or any one of your clients, if you're a health practitioner, suffering from any one of these particular things? And if so, well, we can recognize it. And if we can recognize it and be more self-aware, then we can actually take care of the actual issue itself. Okay, so let's dive right in. And again, all the research from those institutions that I just spoke about, I will be sharing their research right now. Again, we're looking at National Institute of Health, Harvard Health. We're looking at the Center for Disease Control, the CDC, and the Mayo Clinic, okay? And they all pretty much say the same things, but I wanted to make sure we covered all our bases. And so there were some nuances between each one, and I just wanted to add a conglomerate of all of those. All right, so there's 4 specific categories, 4 categories of obesogenic factors, and those meaning these things cause people to gain weight, all right? So the first one is medical. So there are medical conditions that are fixable, by the way. So everything that I'm talking about is fixable. We'll be talking about some of these socioeconomic ones that we need to do a better job at, but still certainly I think we can help with those. Okay, so there are medical conditions like Cushing's disease, PCOS, hypothyroidism, type 2 diabetes or diabetes in general, etc., that could all cause weight gain. Now, again, when we're talking about Cushing's, PCOS, hypothyroidism, low thyroid, or type 2 diabetes, all of those are reversible, all of those are fixable. If any doctor tells you that they are not, that doctor simply does not know how to help you reverse it, and that's okay. Conventional medicine is not taught how to help you reverse disease. What they do, and they're skilled at, is prescribing a pharmaceutical that helps to mitigate the symptoms that you may have. That means it palliates the symptoms. It gets rid of them. It essentially plays peekaboo with the symptoms. You go on the pharmaceutical, the symptoms go away, but the dis-ease in the body hasn't. So I highly recommend working with a practitioner if you're suffering from a chronic disease that knows how to help you with that. Naturopathic doctors know how to help. Integrative health practitioners level 2 know how to help. Our team at Equalife knows how to help identify the underlying root cause imbalances. All right, so medical conditions, and really important that we look at this as well. But this is actually stated again. You might be surprised, but the CDC states this. Chemicals, environmental chemicals and toxins from the environment, creating inflammation that then disrupts the immune system and microbiome. And I was shocked. Like, yes, of course, I've studied that in natural health, but to see the CDC say that, I thought that was really, really interesting. So important factor to look at that. And then also drugs, pharmaceuticals that you might be on. I'm not going to talk about street drugs. We're talking about pharmaceuticals when I say drugs. So if you're on a steroid, right? Let's say you're on prednisone. Well, it can cause inflammation. Birth control, it can cause weight gain. Antidepressants, blood pressure medication, all of those can cause weight gain. So please just keep that in mind, that you will have to fix the underlying root cause so that you can work with your doctor to wean off the pharmaceuticals if that's what's also causing the weight gain. Really important to look at that. All right, the second category is your overall health, and it has to do with more of the internal. So the first one's genetics. Some people are more prone to weight gain. Anybody who tells you different does not understand the somatotypes, or in Ayurvedic medicine, the doshas. Really important to look at this, because a Vata body type would be really difficult for that person to gain 100 extra pounds. It'd be really difficult. Right? Their metabolism is much faster. They have a much thinner frame. They're more in the sympathetic nervous. It's just more challenging. Now, an endomorph or a kapha body type, much easier to gain weight. And again, everybody can eat carbohydrates, but a endomorph has to go easier on the starchier carbohydrates. And that's not what today's show is all about, but there is a genetic factor. Now, there are other factors within our genes called SNPs, single nucleotide polymorphisms, and these also can be well, they get turned on by the environment, and then it can actually cause weight gain. Now, the nice thing is this: although you can't change your genotype, you can change your phenotype. And I have a podcast on that as well. And the phenotype is essentially what you do with your genetics. So, a lot of people, well, they weren't overweight at 8 years old or 10 years old or whatever it might be. And then they were overweight when they hit their late 20s. And so, again, you're absolutely able to reverse these things. You are, without a doubt. Okay, age is another factor. The older you are, the slower your metabolism does get. Now, again, I know there's a lot of people saying, well, that's not true. You can boost your... I get it. I understand. But the percentages still go down. So let's say you're operating at 100% metabolism metabolic rate, like speedy metabolic rate at 18 years old. Let's just go with that. All right. Well, each year with age, let's say after the age of 27, and that's going to be my next point. Hormones are typically going to start to fall. Muscle mass is typically going to start to fall. All of these things matter, and that's part of age. Now, you can absolutely keep your muscle on your body, no doubt about it. I'm not saying that. And again, this goes for women and men. Especially for women, you start to lose bone mass and muscle mass after the age of 27, 0.5 pound a year. Well, it's 5 pounds per decade. Doesn't seem like a big deal, but it adds up because it starts to slow that metabolic rate. So, age does matter. It's a fraction, maybe of a percent every year that your metabolism does go down, but it still adds up over time. It just means that you can't eat maybe as much calories or as many calories as you once did. You might have to do a little bit more cardio, or I don't want to go down that path, but you might have to do more things in order to boost your ability to burn calories. Again, it can be high intensity interval training, sprint interval training, cardio, walking, however you like to do it, right? Okay, so that's that. Now, that's the age factor. Hormones, I just touched on. Your hormone levels in terms of estrogen and progesterone for women, testosterone for men, but also goes for testosterone for women. After the age of around 45, 50, those levels can begin to start to dip. Sometimes earlier in life, there's no doubt about it. The higher the stress, the more worn out you are, the less sleep you've got, the less taken care of, the more toxicity, the faster those hormones can fall. And when that happens, you're more prone to weight gain. There's just no doubt about it. So what we want to do is optimize those hormones naturally. I'm just coming out and saying it because we've worked with tens of thousands of people now with their hormones. Very few people, if any, very few people, very, very, very few people need any type of hormone replacement therapy before the age of 60. Very few. And even in your 60s, it's not necessarily necessary. It is if some people choose to, and that's okay. But before that, everything can be fixed naturally. It really can. Like, don't let anybody tell you that it can't. And you might as well fix the underlying root causes that cause the low hormones in the first place, right? And you might say, well, I'm going through menopause. I understand. But you can still optimize those hormones. You can still optimize your hormones for a healthy level easily through your 40s and early 50s minimum. Without a doubt. All right. And the last one is microbiome, believe it or not. This has been shown over and over, and I have a podcast on this as well, on Bacteroides and Firmicutes. These are just two of the bacteria. Okay. So research has shown that literally people with a healthier gut microbiome lose weight more easily, burn more body fat. That's just, again, clinically proven. They've actually taken the fat-burning bacteria, we'll call it, and inserted it into mice that were overweight, and those mice lost weight. So again, balance your gut microbiome. Run a bacterium parasite stool test if you haven't before. You can look at the one that we use. You don't have to run it, but you can look at the one we use at stevencabral.com/stool-test if you want to get more of an insight into that. All right, the third category is social determinants of health, they are called. That's the exact line. Social determinants of health. It goes into the socioeconomics of what happens when you don't have good access to healthy food. Now, this is a real thing. Like, it's a real thing, but it's gotten so much better. So I travel all over the United States, speaking, attending conferences, going to meetings, all these different things. And I go to all sorts of different grocery food stores, not just a Whole Foods, right? Or Sprouts, or I don't know, so what are some of the other ones? Erewhon's, or like the most expensive ones. Not just those. Like, I'll walk into back in the day, when I lived in Medford, Massachusetts, Johnny Foodmaster, right? Johnny's Foodmaster. I'll go into a Target, and you can see what they have there. I'll go into a Publix. So again, that we're doing much better at getting fruits and vegetables, which there didn't used to be, to people all over the United States. Now, There is a cost issue. There's no doubt about that. But what it used to be was the actual access to the food. Okay, that's what it used to be. Now the shipping and logistics is just so much better. But I do agree. So again, cost-wise, you have to stick to that clean 15 and dirty dozen. If you've never heard about that, we'll link up that show today at stephencabral.com/2483. stephencabral.com/2483 is today's show. Okay, so there's the food part. There's also food advertising. So from a very young age, we are marketed cereal. We are marketed processed foods. We are marketed candy. All of these things get the dopaminergic sensors in the brain going, saying, oh, we want that. We want that. That'll make me feel happy. That'll make me feel good. That'll give me energy. And of course, it will for the short term, and then you crash. Right? But that food advertising is a big one. And the other is access. So, and again, this has gotten better, but access to a gym, access to fitness in general, access to parks. So again, you could say, well, you can just go outside and walk and do whatever. Yeah, you can. But like a lot of people, they don't have access necessarily to these things. Now, again, it's gotten so much better. There's YMCAs all over the place. I used to go to the YMCA in near it was the Roxbury Chinatown line in Boston, Massachusetts. And that was for everybody. I went there because they had one of the best pools in Boston. It was like a 5-lane lap pool. And when I was doing sprint triathlons, I used to swim there for practice. And so, it's gotten better. And so they have a lot of programs that enable people to be able to get into these gyms, which I think it is important. I really do. All right. And the fourth category is lifestyle. These things are huge, and we have a lot more control over these specific items. So let's dive right into it. The first one is portions. And I'm telling you right now, and my daughters, I try to teach them this as well. As kids, they can eat more food if they're more active, yes. But at certain restaurants we might go out to, and the portions are much smaller. Like typically those are considered like the fancier restaurants, and I'm doing that in air quotes. And the funny thing is you're paying more for the food, which is really just the environment for the most part, and you're getting smaller portions. Then we go to a different restaurant, and it's like these huge portions, right? And nobody needs that much food, right? Like nobody needs that much at one sitting for the human stomach and the human body, because it's not like it's going to be our only meal for the next 3 or 4 days. And so the portions for the most part, especially in the US, are just way too big. They're way too big. When I'm over in Europe traveling, the portions are nowhere near the same size. They're just not. All right. The next one is lack of quality sleep. So people are not getting 7 to 9 hours of sleep per night. They're on their phones or computers or screens too much at night. They might be working 2 jobs, 3 jobs. And even when they do, there's not quality sleep. So the deep sleep isn't there. The REM sleep isn't there. They're not repairing their body. It can lead to elevated levels of glucose, inflammation, weight gain. Sleep apnea. Sleep apnea is a huge issue, but a lot of that has to do also with being overweight. It really does. I mean, a lot of people in our practice, we've helped them lose 50, 60 plus pounds, and their sleep apnea, essentially, along with other things, magically disappears, right? The other one's lack of movement. Again, as I said, whether there's a park or no park, gym or no gym, a lot of my workouts are just done at home now. But for the most part, movement. We need to move the body. We need to get 7,000 to 10,000 steps per day. And you might say, well, who has the time to do that? But the truth is that most humans will move about 3,000 steps per day, maybe 4 at the most. But then it's like, okay, how do I get 6,000 more? Well, it's 60 more minutes of walking. So I'm not saying it's insignificant, but what I am saying is, 2 30-minute walks a day, 3 20-minute walks a day. Yeah, I mean, you have to do it. There's no doubt about it. It takes some time, but you can typically do other things during that time. Now, it could be during your workout. That counts. Could be walking your dog. That counts. And so what you want to do is just understand that it is a factor, and it will help with glucose and inflammation, parasympathetic nervous system healing, and so much more. All right, formal exercise. This is a big one because although the walking's phenomenal, it's not going to replace manual labor that humans were meant to do. So there should be some type of formal exercise 2 to 3 days a week, strength training of some type to keep the metabolism elevated. This next one that they listed, which I thought was really smart, wasn't just like poor decision-making with nutrition, too many processed foods, too much sugar, right? But it was liquid calories. There's no need to drink liquid calories besides a smoothie, which is actually a meal, right? So you're actually eating fruit. It's just easier to digest. That's like literally it, right? But I'm talking about energy drinks, sodas, fruit juices, things with no fiber, no protein or anything to it. And again, like I'm just holding up a water bottle here. Good old-fashioned water, spring water. You can have herbal tea, that's fine, right? But you need to get away from anything that has calories in it that basically comes from a can or a bottle. Really, really important. And this last one, so some of these are newer over the last couple decades, but also too much television, too much internet, too much, basically sitting down, watching these smart-based devices. All of these things do what? They lead to less movement, less activity, more snacking, more eating, portions too big. All of the blue light from all of these screens affect our sleep. And that does what? Well, then that affects our genetics, right? So it begins to turn on or stimulate some of those single nucleotide polymorphisms. And then what happens? Well, we have higher levels of inflammation, and it leads to then chronic-based disease, which is also inflammatory. We start to gain more weight, 5 pounds a year, then turns into 10 pounds the next year, then 15. And all of a sudden, we didn't gain 30 pounds in a year, but we gained it over 5-6 years. And so what I want to share with you is that all of this can be reversed. It really can. I understand that there are factors that fight against us. The world around us is not a healthy place, right? I think we've established that now, but that doesn't mean that we need to get down on ourselves or what our goals are. We can absolutely achieve those. And we can achieve them by really straightforward, simple lifestyle-based factors. And I'm not trying to downplay it and be condescending and say that it's super easy. It's not, but it's worthwhile. It's a goal that I believe is worthwhile because it's going to, as they say, add years to your life and life to your years. And I truly mean that. That's what I've seen in my clinical practice now over the past 25 years working with people. And so I wanted to share that. If you ever want more tips on weight loss, I have at least 300 shows that are all free. And so you're welcome to check those out at stephencabral.com/podcast. Just scroll through the images, click on the weight loss based ones. That will help. They're typically the Wednesday shows. You can check out my Fatlocity system. You can check out my functional medicine detox. All of these things are step by step. And so again, however we can be helpful, just let us know. All right. Thanks everybody. Appreciate you tuning in. Of course, feel free to share the show with anyone you believe it could serve. Did you know that the body really only becomes sick or imbalanced in only 2 ways? Over time, you become deficient in vital nutrients, and you also accumulate toxins internally and from the environment. As those nutrients diminish and you increase your total toxic load, your body then begins to show the first signs of dis-ease. It's actually quite predictable, and the good news is that if we know how you began to fill up that proverbial rain barrel, we also know how to empty it to begin the healing process. I was fortunate enough to learn this ancient healing process from my mentor after suffering from debilitating diseases for close to a decade. It was only when I began to implement these techniques did I finally overcome my illnesses and go on to live a life of energy and vitality that I now enjoy. I'd like to share with you now what I discovered after traveling all over the world and how to combine the best of ancient healing wisdom with state-of-the-art science. Allow me to teach you exactly how I've been able to help over 250,000 people to empty their rain barrel and begin to transform their body and lives into what they've always hoped they could be. To get your copy of the international bestseller, The Rain Barrel Effect, simply go to stephencabral.com/rainbarrel.